Yono and the Celestial Elephants is a cute new indie game that adopts the gameplay of traditional Legend of Zelda games with a story that's sort of reminiscent of Avatar The Last Airbender. Play as an adorable little celestial elephant figure tasked with saving the world. So maybe that introduction is a bit bizarre, but I'll do my best to explain the story. In this game world, celestial elephants are born every once a millennium and they come down to the world to help its people and at times save the world. This game takes place during the era of Yono the elephant, our main character. Yono is young and born into this world that's shared by robots, humans, and zombies, and the different species bring up social issues that are now up to Yono to fix. It's sort of the story of Avatar The Last Airbender, but with an elephant without the crazy elemental powers, though there is a skin in the game that lets you cosplay as Avatar Aang essentially. Overall, it's about a 7 to 8 hour interesting story that you wouldn't really expect from a cute looking game like this. Yono and the Celestial Elephants adopts a traditional gameplay you'd recognize from top-down camera view Legend of Zelda games. You control Yono as a celestial elephant born from the stars. Yono can move around, interact with objects, and use his trunk to suck in water or blow out air. The controls and tools at your disposal are pretty simple and easy to adapt to. The game will have you explore 4 towns and 3 dungeons as you try to help every NPC that comes at you with their problems. Let's talk about the towns first. Towns typically give you a handful of things to do, like talk to NPCs for side quests, complete main story objectives, or customizing Yono. The side quests traditionally seem to be fetch quests that daisy chain to another side quest. For example, delivering a message from one lover to another, but also trying to get the person blocking the entrance to one of their homes out of the way. Another mission will have you try to get a book stamp and then deliver to another location. The side quests do add some variety to the more prominent dungeon crawling gameplay, but in itself becomes more repetitive as well. The lack of any form of inventory system also hurts these quests as well, as they have you carry an item on your back, meaning that once you start a side quest, you have to finish it or you'll lose your progress. Now, much like other dungeon crawlers out there, there's a handful of different types of collectibles in this game. As the player, you can collect coins that act as currency, and this can be used to unlock new skins for Yono to change up its look. There's a nice selection of skins to choose from, and like I mentioned before, there's even an avatar looking one. Your health can also be upgraded using health tokens that pretty much are the equivalent to heart pieces. Collecting 4 health tokens adds another piece of health to Yono. The last collectible pieces are letters. Letters are used to unscramble ancient texts that give you a bit of background story and information regarding the history of celestial elephants. Now, underneath each of the towns and some of the outside world areas are subway stations. These sort of act as fast travel spots that quickly let you jump from one area to another in the game. They won't take you directly where you want to go, but generally within a short travel distance of where you're trying to go. That pretty much covers the towns, but the big focus of this game is the dungeon crawling gameplay. Throughout the game, you'll come across puzzles that stop your progression in the game. Sometimes you'll find them outside in between the sections that transition from town to town, but most of the time they'll be primarily focused inside of a dungeon. Puzzles are primarily simple in design because of the amount of tools and skills at Yono's disposal. Usually you'll be activating switches, putting out fires, turning on torches, or moving blocks. Although your tools will remain the same, the environments change up between the terrains and it adds a bit of diversity to the puzzles. For example, in later sections of the game, you'll find piles of leaves that hide different switches in the area, as well as flowers that actually drop types of bombs that you can use to activate other types of switches. The puzzles are pretty approachable for the most part, and I never really had trouble figuring out a puzzle. At most, I took a few minutes to solve a pattern where I was supposed to move multiple blocks on a piece of sliding tiles, but other than that, the puzzles were relatively easy to tackle. Along with the puzzles and dungeons are enemies for you to fight, and they're incredibly boring. Dungeon enemies come in different shapes and sizes, but ultimately are all defeated the same way, being headbutted by Yono. Larger enemies take more headbutts of course, but ultimately all of them can be defeated by spamming buttons, well, sort of. You hurt enemies with a headbutt, but if you do it too close to them, the hit doesn't register. Instead, you have to have a running start and then headbutt to have the attack register. It's a really odd gameplay mechanic since ultimately you're just doing the same thing over and over again to attack. Luckily, the combat sections in this game are few in numbers, and ironically, some of the best moments in this game are the combat sections against the main bosses, not the enemies. Dungeon bosses change up the combat to include more environment and puzzle elements. For example, the first boss requires you to constantly activate a switch that drops a crate on the boss's head. It reuses some of the puzzle elements in a new form of combat that feels unique throughout the game. But sadly, there's only 3 dungeons, and so these boss fights are also pretty few in numbers. Now, I ran into a few bugs and odd game design choices when playing on the PC version. There was one instance where I fell off a cliff and landed in the fence area behind a tree, and that pretty much forced me to have to reload the game because I didn't have a way out. In another instance, a block wouldn't spawn for a puzzle that required me to move a block in front of a laser that would block the laser from hitting me. The bugs weren't that frequent, but I still wanted to note them because I did see them. Yono and the Celestial Elephants is a very mixed bag for me when it comes to presentation. The art style is cute and colorful with really chibi looking character models. Yono is an adorable protagonist that looks as cute as he does derpy at times. NPC models on the other hand look much more derpy with the chibi look on them and more often than not look bad to me. It gets worse when characters begin to speak. The animation for speech dialogue bubbles are simple and boring, and dialogue prompts just pop in with text scrolling and it moves at the same time, making it a little bit harder to actually read a piece of dialogue when it's being written. While the main protagonist and a lot of the environments look good in my eyes, other elements like NPCs and the dialogue bosses just sort of stick out like a sore thumb to me. It gets worse when we talk about the audio. Now let me just start off by saying I actually really dig the soundtrack in this game. The temple music track adds a sense of wonder to a location that's supposed to keep the record of this mysterious line of celestial beings that Yono originates from. On the other hand, the cave background music has this feeling of curiosity attached to it that's perfect for wandering through dungeons that have yet to be explored. Generally, the music tracks are well crafted and applied accordingly to match the theme of certain locations. The real audio trouble comes from the sound effects, and they're pretty bad. They sound like they were grabbed from a free sound library website and then played over a speaker and then re-recorded. For example, the sound of pots being smashed sound completely generic, like someone just googled pots breaking sound effect and then ripped the first thing that came up. Collecting a health token sounds like you're getting an error in Windows or a notification from Instant Messenger. The sound effects are pretty much on par with some cash grab phone games I've seen on the Google Play Store. It's sort of a bummer because the music is actually pretty good in this game. Yono and the Celestial Elephants is a very chill dungeon crawling game. It's not really that challenging, feeling more like a breeze at times. Gameplay is enjoyable with interesting dungeons to explore, but are somewhat hindered by the boring enemy sequences. Luckily they're not a big reoccurrence in this game, but sadly the bosses that are really cool aren't either. The biggest drawback for me though was its very mixed presentation of having really good music and a good looking protagonist and setting, while also having pretty ugly looking NPC models and terrible sound effect design. Ultimately, I think Yono is just alright. I didn't think it was amazing, but outside of some of the mediocre presentation and bad combat design that luckily only makes 5 to 10% of the game, it's not terrible either. Yono currently goes for $15 on the Nintendo eShop and on Steam, and at that price I'd say it's only really worth getting if you're itching for a new dungeon crawling game and don't really care about its lacking challenge. I don't really consider myself incredibly well versed in puzzles, but even I didn't think the game was too challenging with its puzzles and exploration, which is arguably one of the most important parts of a dungeon crawling game. If these cons don't sit well with you, then perhaps you might want to wait for this game to drop down to the $10 mark. However, if you're not bothered by these cons and still want to play the game, it launches on October 12th on Steam and the Nintendo Switch eShop for $15. That does it for my review of Yono and the Celestial Elephants, but if you have any questions I may have missed in my review, feel free to ask me in the comment section down below and I'll do my best to try to respond. If you enjoy my reviews and content, then please consider subscribing. It'll let you know whenever I drop more content, and I do reviews on PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and PC. As always, thank you all very much for watching, hope you guys have a great day, and keep on gaming.